And what's up, Polar fam? This is ShibBear here from the Polar team on our weekly community AMA here on July 6th, 2022. 30 minutes before normal. Well, let me bring you up here. 30 minutes before normal. I kind of just went into why right before we went live here, but basically just giving some respect to another larger node protocol that many people here may be involved in. So shout out to them. Let them do their thing. And if you are tuned to that, you should probably tune into their AMA in like an hour and a half. But I want to give us enough time here to talk and be able to go through questions. And if we actually had a good amount of questions today, I want to make sure we had enough time to cover them all for you guys so that no one was kind of conflicted on whether they want to be a part of this one or that one. So, as always, if anybody has any questions, feel free simply to request to speak. Simply post in that AMA Questions Weekly channel on our Discord. Or, if you really have to, I guess post in general. Please try not to post in general. Try to post in that AMA Questions Weekly because that's what I would prefer so we can kind of navigate it through that. So there have been some updates, at least on the back side of things, that I cannot quite release yet, but I can at least now positively say that some of the changes that are coming to this version 4.0 are going to be a little bit more clear coming up very soon. These things have now been decided, and they're working on the implementation side of it, see exactly how it works. Then we can start going into some of the things on that end there. But it's going to allow us to involve our DApp and our tokens and even that live system with a little bit more than just the Polar token in of itself, which has ultimately created an emissions issue, of course, but two, an issue of which it's still very, very that same Ponzi economic theory where we just need people to be buying Polar or else the token price falls, right? Of course. So there's going to be some things there. One thing I can say very publicly and that we are working to implement, of course, is a very, very direct burn strategy in reference to that node life system. I know I've hinted at it in the past. It's becoming more and more clear, so I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about it in detail. But the percentages, the distribution could be a little bit, swayed, of course, could be anything from 100% of it to 80 or 90% of it, stuff like that. But in some capacity, we would like a very substantial portion of this node life system theory to go directly to immediate buy and burns of these circulating supply. We are over 4 million in circulating supply right now. That is not a winning formula. As we are all very much aware, inflation is a real thing. If you guys live anywhere in the world, you are aware of what inflation is. When a gallon of milk now costs you 7 times what it did 10 years ago, that's inflation, right? So things like that, that's basically just more money gets printed, so the money gets diluted. So the more that's diluted, the less its value per dollar, in this case per Polar token. So that is what we want to remedy. So if you were to even go back to our 1 million supply from here, from our over 4 million, obviously, that would be putting us right about probably that 10 cents range-ish, which is a bit more appealing. So that's a direct effect. The psychological effect of a token price rising cannot be dismayed. So that is a very, very, very significant piece of all this, because if a token price is falling, it's very hard to get people to engage with that protocol, of course. Why would you want to? But if a token price is rising, whether it be from increased demand or decreased supply, either or, basic economic theory, then at least there is that outside perspective. A lot of you guys here that are in the AMA, the 50-something of you that are in here right now, have been with us for a long time, or you at least engage in the AMAs weekly, so you are pretty attuned to what we're working with here. However, we need more investors over time. We can't just work with what we got and hope that everything is going to be fine. We need to continue to grow and expand, and the best way to do that is to change the sentiment of these types of protocols. And, unfortunately, I already see people asking a little bit about what am I bringing this AMA up for? A little bit earlier for. It's in reference to Thor. Right before I went live and recording, I have a ton of respect for the team. I'm invested in the protocol on a personal level, and I'm pretty close with Loki on a personal level as well. So all respect to them, all shout out to them. If you are a heavy investor in Thor, I'd recommend go checking out their AMA a little bit less than an hour and a half from now. I moved ours up so that our investors didn't have to choose between which one to attend. Ours today is basically just chilling with you guys like I do every week. Theirs might be a little bit more significant. I'm not sure what information is going to come out from that. I really haven't had time to look into it, but it is something that'll be important for their protocol. Not in reference to Polar, nothing to do with us, but just want to give you guys that ability to go chill with them if you need to at some point here in the next hour and a half. So that being said, even with other large node protocols, we've seen I don't know, if you look from all-time highs, 99+% down from all-time highs is where most of them are, and that's not great. It's very, very hard to get the sentiment back up when people can see that. However, the return on investment strategy that got people to invest is still the same theory. So, in which case you earn in this scenario, an Everest earning 20 Polar per day before claims tax still earns 20 Polar per day, whether the token price is 0.03 or whether it's $3 or whatever, right? So if we can attract an increasing token price again, that directly and indirectly gives incentive for people to want to re-engage with the protocol because they have true faith that they will not only obtain their return on investment, but exceed that return on investment once again, even before the node degrading kind of life system comes into play. Because in theory, if the token price is 0.03 and over the course of a month it goes up to 0.05, you are now ahead of the curve by that, whatever, 30 some odd percent or whatever it is. So that's something to kind of consider as we move forward. I've told people every week, and I've even had a couple of discussions where people are like, well, what can we do? Should I buy more nodes? Should I do this? You're never going to find me telling you exactly what to do with money. Never. I'm not going to tell you to invest, to not invest. I'm not going to tell you to do anything. But that being said, the sentiment is what drives these protocols. So if the sentiment is low and there's nothing but negativity or even dullness in the Discords and on the Twitters and all that, then it's very, very, very hard to attract new investors. If the sentiment is positive, even if you're not reinvesting anymore, that's fine. Trust me, I'm not going to shame anybody because that's not what we do here. It's not the point of any of this. But you're saying, hey, I'm already down quite a bit. Instead of just being very upset about it, we're all here in this same spot together. And just until recently, I wasn't a part of the official Polar team. I was just a community manager who had a lot invested in Polar on my personal side too. So, things like this, we all need this to succeed in various ways. One, because the community deserves it, and two, because Polar has some fantastic ideas. We just have to be able to get there. So over time, I think a lot of these things can be obtained. The sentiment is incredibly important. So I highly advise anybody, what can I do to help Polar? Maybe I need to talk to whomever's running our Twitter again and say, hey, I don't care if the sentiment's not great. Let's just post every day, one thing every day. Then we can come in here in the Discord and I can say, hey guys, can you please go comment, retweet this? I don't care. Do something with it. Give it a little bit of interaction because every little bit helps. And that just helps change the perception and the sentiment of this protocol in general, because nothing malicious is happening here. It's just there's a down market and a very low demand. And that's the reality of it. So we can work on changing that little by little. I think true engagement. Remember when we were all legitimately a family? I guess our families fight at some point, but right now, we need to regain that true family aspect. And trust me, that does not mean throw every penny you got into anything in crypto ever. I do not recommend that. I recommend having a very well-versed emergency fund and living your life without debts and stuff like that. But there's ways to change the sentiment without even using dollars. If you can and you want to support the protocol and you believe that we're going to increase in price over time, then maybe it would be good for you to invest into it, but that's going to be up to you via your own research and the things that are delivered by the team. Another update I would like to get to is we will ultimately begin to have things like the roadmap updated more regularly, as well as more teasers released and just updates released over time. There's just a couple things that we have to do kind of on the I don't want to word that, on the all the different teams that are working separately but together. So when you think about how these are built, there's in the most basic level, a front end, a back end, and the Solidity, just for a basic protocol. Those three people could be doing their own things and still working towards the same task. Then right at the end, they all integrate. So we have to get a little bit better at getting updates from all of them as if it were to be one piece and kind of move forward from that on that side there, which will allow, one, just the community to see what we're doing, which is important. I think that's very, very important, but it also allows us to show off some of the work that we're doing, which I think is even more important, right? So we need to show you guys that we are getting these things together, and even the things that we just see on where I am in this team. It's amazing. Some of this stuff is pretty cool. So I would love for it to get out to the public a little bit more as we move forward. So that's what I look forward to as we start navigating through there. Again, as always, I can probably ramble on forever, maybe about great things, maybe about nothing. Who knows? So if any of you guys do have a question, obviously feel free to request to speak. Go over anything that you can in the written comments in the AMA Questions Weekly channel there. I know there's just a couple in there, so fill that up if you'd like. I'd love for it to be going on. Dang, Muck, man. Is it really going on right now? My bad. I thought it was going on at 4 p.m. Central. So if there's this going on right now, then I moved this up for nothing. So I apologize. But nevertheless, hopefully they have some good news coming from all that. So, my bad there, Muck. And we all make mistakes. What's up, Sandman? Hey, bud, can you hear me, or can I hear you?
Hello?
Hey, what's going on? How are you?
How you been?
Doing
How are
pretty
you?
well.
Good, good. I know I haven't actually stepped up and speak for a few weeks, but that doesn't speak for my investment in Polar. I've actually probably tripled my nodes since then. But I just came up here, man, to talk a little bit. I had a few questions. I don't know if there's a real answer for it. I'm just curious about some strategy stuff. So I've been pretty much just buying more nodes, buying more Everest as I accumulate enough Polar to do so. And I've gotten to a point where I have all these nodes, but I want to prepare for that migration and for that decay. So I'm just I'm trying to figure out what's a good time where it's like, all right, I have all these nodes. I'm making X amount of Polar per day. I would love to know, like, if there's a possibility when the nodes decay, what kind of amount of Polar I would need to make sure my nodes are back to 100%. So I don't know if there's an answer for that, but that was going to be my first question.
Hey, that's a great question, man. So this may or may not be taken super well by everybody in the community, but I have talked about it on a previous AMA. We are very likely, I'm not going to say 100% confirmed yet, but very likely to introduce some stable coin for that life potion system. So then it'll be a stable coin to go from there instead of just directly in Polar. Reason being, yes, people might sell Polar to get that stable coin, but it does encourage, ideally, at least some different currency to come into the protocol, hopefully. That's kind of the play there, and a lot of other protocols have done it that way. Ideally, that could be a decent thing that's going on from our perspective, hopefully. So it's not totally 100%, but that's where we're leaning towards pretty significantly.
Got it. And can I ask, what is the advantage of doing it with a stablecoin as opposed to using Polar to replenish your Everest or your other nodes?
Yeah, so just the general basic theory of that is kind of multifold. So one, let's just say you're going to use Polar to do it, then you're going to take your accumulated rewards, of course, and then just immediately deposit them, right? Now, there's a very good chance that people are just going to take their accumulated rewards, sell them, and then deposit that stablecoin. That's very possible as well. The only difference there is then, at least when we go to do the buybacks and burns, we are actually buying back a token instead of it just being a circulating already token in that sense. And it's not super significant, but it does make a little difference over time when you take into account the actual accumulation of these as far as the kind of what I mentioned earlier, the visibility side. It'll be a buy and then a burn. And then it also allows us to help if we choose to put any percentage, even if it's just 5% or whatever, towards a treasury. It allows us to get that treasury in there without having to sell Polar on the other side. So we remove that kind of additional sell pressure, and then ideally get a little bit of buy pressure over time. That's the goal anyway.
Got it. Oh, that's a good answer. Thank you. And then I just had another question surrounding the supply as far as I guess my question is more surrounded like what is the anticipation of when we do migrate as far as how are we solving the problem with having to print more and the what's it called? I'm blanking out, but it running out, the pool running out. What is the strategy behind that, if I may ask?
Yeah, so that's another great conversation that I can help go into a little bit more here. So as we've seen in increasing weeks, there was one week there where we actually were a net positive in the claims reward pool. But this week and last week, it has been depleting, unfortunately, quicker. As soon as that price went back down, it was like a fire sale, right? People just kept claiming and selling, and it's to the point that it's so large and incumbent that it's very hard to keep up with where we are now. The easy answer is to say that clearly emissions are higher than the demand, very, very clearly. So
Right.
that's I think that's kind of the premise. Now, how do we solve that? Is a variety of things. Enor is, and I do agree on this. We want to implement the version 4.0 first, kind of assess what that does to that demand cycle and the supply cycle from the burn end, and then make some additional changes from there. I've even, we've talked about single side staking for a while. That at least encourages people to not sell. It does increase emissions though, but I think there could be different strategies like if you reduce the daily yield of the nodes themselves, but you kind of supplement that with a staking side, so that the percentages at least close to even out. And if that point that they do even out, then at least it encourages like, hey, if I want to get the full amount of this, then I would, claim the stake or whatever, and then I would just stake my tokens where I wouldn't sell them. That's kind of my theory of things, and I think that might work over time. But we kind of do one step at a time here, and
Right.
make sense on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. And I feel like it would take time to actually see that and play that out. I was curious as far as like actually even to getting to that. Like, I'm sure you guys have data. Do you have like the data on demand as far as like like maybe even a month? A lot of engagement, a lot of nodes are being sold, but I'm wondering like what is it like the amount of nodes being purchased per day today as opposed to when we were above 10 cents, and if like how much of a decline in percentage that is, because then that's a good way to figure out like what kind of how much more people we need to be able to like flip that where we're increasing that demand to be net positive as opposed to going down.
Yeah, so that's a little bit trickier to say because I haven't done the actual math on how many nodes have been minted over the last week or so compared to some other weeks. But in all reality, it's not actually as much as I was thinking. So I'm looking right now, we're at a total node count of 54,097. And we were just under 50,000 when we removed the hard cap. If I'm not like 48 or 49,000, maybe somewhere around there. So we didn't like go up 100%. We went up probably, if not a little slower pace than normal, right about normal pace. The issue is that people are paying so little for them that, we saw one day somebody made like 200 Everest or something like that, something crazy. And, that can happen. If someone puts 10K into this, I'm not sure what the math would be, but it'd be very advantageous on their end compared to what it used to be.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I definitely think like if you look at just sentiment of the market, where our price is today, like you want to be buying at these levels. I mean, we've had a big bounce off 3 cents before to 7, and that's more than 2x. And I think people are underplaying of how big of a move that was. So selling them now, I think your rewards, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like this is a great buying opportunity, especially if BTC has floored. If not, if there's one more leg down, I think that might be a possibility. I think from there on up, like these are the best buying opportunities. I feel like this is the best time to try to get more people invested into Polar and getting more making more noise, because ultimately, like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in my previous history, when you're buying during bear markets, that's when you're making the most money. So that's just kind of like my last thing I wanted to say before I bounce here. But thank you for having me up, and I appreciate the dialogue.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Good to talk to you again, and hope you're doing well in your life, man.
Thank you. You too.
That's a great question. That was a great, little line of questions there. It's kind of what I like, even though I don't have a ton of direct new news for you guys every week, and I know some people get frustrated over that. It's kind of just like, coffee with Polar. So we can all chill here, maybe voice a concern, maybe get some updates if I have some, just kind of talk and chill and answer questions and At the end of the day, we've been in this kind of market for about 2 months now, right? May, June, July. Yeah. So it's been, I think we've all kind of hit that point of mental fatigue at some point where we kind of hit our lull and now we pop back up a little bit where we're just like, this is crypto now and we're okay-ish. So that's a good thing, in a sense that it doesn't seem to be as hostile with people, because honestly, finances are, as they say, finance is the number one cause of divorce, dispute over finances. So things like that, keep in mind, it's literally going to entice emotion. So when I would say like, hey, finance is very emotional, or crypto is very emotional, or somebody's investing and they're very emotionally invested at this point, it's not as an insult, it's just reality that you care about it. Obviously, you have to, because it's the money that you put in there and it's real money. And if it didn't go down, you could use it for other things like food or rent or a vacation or, another thing that went up. Who knows? But so I totally understand all that did occur over the last couple of months. And I appreciate you guys still sticking around. We still have a decent amount in here. I do miss the old 250 plus of us in here crashing my Discord, but hey, nevertheless, we will get back there. I am sure of it. The sentiment will change and we will be back on top once again. I do have total faith in that. So, are there any questions in the AMA Questions Weekly that I can answer for people?
First of all, hey, sorry, I forgot to. I forgot that I was muted earlier, and so you can consider this my official greeting. I hope you're all fine. As there are no new requests to speak, I'd say I'll go over the questions from the chat. The first question you kind of already answered. I don't know if you would like to go deeper into the topic. It's from Bargav0410. Why are you frequently increasing supply of Polar?
Why for the increasingly supply of Polar? Is that what the question was?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, you're good. Sorry, I just want to make sure I got everything there. So I
Is
did kind of go.
Is my mic working?
No, you're good. I could hear you fine. You're good, man.
Okay.
That's I've talked a little bit about the inflationary aspects, but I didn't really talk fully about why. I guess I kind of did. I touched on it. So Polar, the token in and of itself, is not an automatic, not an automatic inflating token. It's not like a rebase token where there's an unlimited supply and it just continues to go up over time. It is one that we wanted it to be a $1 million, a 1 million token cap from the beginning, which it was able to do for a long time. However, once emissions got too high, in order to continue to allow people to claim, then once they can, if there's no more Polar in the Polar pool, the claims reward pool, then they cannot claim. So the only way to solve that issue is that if we would basically replenish the pool. And by replenishing the pool, we allow people to then claim. And the only way to really replenish the pool, there's a couple ways. You can mint them, or as a team, we could do like a buyback and resupply. And I've seen that brought up before, and it's not the worst idea in the world. But when you look at the daily sales and the daily claims, once we do that, we are, for better or worse, basically just allowing our treasury to be sold every day. And that kind of sucks, and I don't know if I am wording that in the most appropriate way, but we cannot allow our treasury to get sold all the way down to zero, or else we have nothing to build with. And then all of this becomes very moot because there won't be anything to build from Polar, so then we'd be solely Ponzi economic forever until ultimately we couldn't be anymore. So that is why we have minted more tokens over time, because we do need to replenish that claims reward pool so that people continue to claim. And I think we're at 4.4 million tokens, if I'm not mistaken, which is a lot. And it hurts me a little bit to say, kind of gives me a headache, but that's where we are right now. And we'll continue to have to do so until we either can reduce emissions below the daily claim level, or to incentivize enough demand that it offsets the totality of what we've been working with as far as claims go.
Thank you. Yes, another question regarding the topic. It's not specifically in the AMA Questions Weekly chat, but I read it a couple of times in the last few days. It's kind of the confusion about why there are no new announcements whenever new tokens are printed. Would you go over that again? I know you already answered it in the chat today earlier, which is actually what reminded me of the topic again.
Yeah, that's another great one, and I did answer in the chat and text, but I will answer it here on the audio as well. So, I mean, for better or worse, it just has become so common that we had to continue to mint more tokens. That, I mean, one, if we just announce it every time, it's kind of monotonous in a sense, and it's a little bit negative. It kind of drives some negative emotions, and we're not trying to hide it. Our contract address is very public, and every time it's been minted, people in the chat are like, 200,000 more Polar. So we're not hiding it by any means. There's nothing, malicious or secretive going on to get more tokens out there. Any of you can look up the contract address. I could post it in any of our chats because I keep it in a little tab on my phone so that I could check it as well every once in a while to see where the claims pool is at. So all that there. And, we just have to keep doing it. So it's kind of just become for better or worse, just a necessity to keep the claims going.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. There's actually another question from the general chat right now. It's from Crypto Boy. How can we be sure you won't randomly cut rewards like before? I claim daily just to be safe. I'm sure most think like this. By the way, I'm buying into the project still.
Yeah, so that's a great question there, and I think if we were to go back, we may do that differently. If we were able to go back and kind of replay that little period of time, it was stressful. It was really stressful that we just kept having to mint tokens. It was also at the same time that kind of, as you guys saw, a lot of the team got, like a lot of the team members went away for their own reasons, and then we brought in a new team. So not making an excuse by any means, but there was a little bit of it was just stressful. The markets were crashing. It's chaos everywhere. The waves were just hitting everybody back and forth. So that was a decision that was made. And I think we can all look back and say that may not have been the best decision. And, at the time, I definitely understood it. And I actually even supported it. And I thought it was probably a necessity. I would then prefer, though, to how would I put this, to not do it that way anymore. So if we ever were to change the emissions or to anything like that, I do think it should go to a vote and allow the DAO, the Dano kind of aspect to take over. And maybe they're choices that not everybody necessarily loves, but I'd rather at least have a say in it, which is what we did on the first one, kind of actually. So we had the vote. And then some of the mods were like, hey, we need to give these people 2 days or something so they can, claim before it decreases, which we did. Then the rewards pool ran out more and more and more, and then we changed it. And then obviously it ran out more and more and more. So it was just a little stressful period of time. So what I would say is that as, now my piece of the team, I would highly advise against that. Enor's on the same page and he runs the ship here, so I think that's the best answer I give, is that we none of us prefer to do it that way anymore.
Yes, definitely agree with you. I don't think there are any more requests to speak, so I'll just go over the next question, which is from Captain Tibby. Will there be a new token pair with Polar, particularly USDCE? Building up new liquidity there could bring price back up.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So I think at some point it would be great to either have an additional liquidity pair or to kind of move our liquidity pair from AVAX to a stable coin, whether it's DAI or USDC or something like that, USDC.E probably for the Avalanche chain. So I think that could be something that we can look into as well. I know, like I kind of mentioned before, Enor's really concentrated on getting this version 4.0 out and some of the other bigger things that we're working on our end, which includes our game. So I guess that now differentiates us from some. I don't want to take, hopefully that's not offensive, but that's true. So we still are working on that Polaris game that we've teased a few times. That'll be a big piece of what Enor's focused on. That's kind of been his his bread and butter of what he's really wanting to work towards as a long-term goal. Of course, we keep the short and midterm goals in mind as always. That's how business works. But that would be something fantastic for us long-term over time. I might have drifted too far. Where's my brain at? Let me think. I don't even know if I answered the question. I apologize. So,
I think you did. The question was especially about the token pair with Polar, particularly USDCE, and kind of if a new liquidity pair could bring the price back up.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Kind of drifted there. Got lost in my own mind. So that would be something fantastic. I think that's something we could look at too in the future. I genuinely expect AVAX to be still one of the leading blockchains, especially for DeFi, in the next bullish of markets, whenever that may come. So I do think our liquidity pair in AVAX is going to rise eventually. And I still actually have total faith in that. So I wouldn't recommend moving away from AVAX, totally, but either building a second liquidity pair or at some point when AVAX rebounds pretty well, then moving it to a stable from a liquidity pair, so it's just one, but it's just a stable. I think those are two good options that we should definitely evaluate as time sort of moves forward.
Great. Yes, definitely answered the question, I think. So far, the last question in the AMA Questions Weekly channel is from Keith Nicole from New Zealand, who I think was on the AMA last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. Do we have a model that can be shared yet around the cost of potions to keep NFTs paying out? Will they be tied to a percentage of your NFT rewards as such so that profit can be made? Okay, I'm sorry. It's kind of it's a very long question. I'll just repeat it. Do we have a model that can be shared yet around the cost of potions to keep NFTs paying out? Will they be tied to a percentage of your NFT rewards as such so that profit can be made? If they aren't, how will you ensure profit can still be made if Polar price remains super low?
Hey, shout out to you, Keith. So I love when you're able to up here. I'm sorry that you're unable to get in here today, but I will get the recording up very quickly after, ideally, so you can listen to this back here. But I'm going to put a little check mark so you know that I answered your question, because you're not here to see. So I've talked about this a few times. The life potions are not going to exceed the, what it would take to technically get an ROI on the nodes themselves. Now that's by design. I guess that's more so like a predicting into the future, right? Because if you were, let's say this life system were to exist back in April, and then you just fully replenished your node up on April 28th or whatever, and then the price drops significantly, then that's very hard to determine, what is an actual, for that cycle, you might have been down, honestly, if I'm just going to be a realist. But nevertheless, if we can also burn tokens and also encourage positive price token action and also not set these life potions to the point that they're not designed to cost more than it would take to get back out of the protocol, then I think that's a system designed for success. Are there faults in it? Quite possibly, and like the one I just mentioned, of course, but that would be a multiple strategy system to try to not allow it to really hurt the investors, but rather just encourage people to put some money back into the protocol if they still believe and still want to, and in turn they can still get their returns as usual.
Damn it, I forgot I was muted again. The next question is from Madeira Alex75. Since we have 4.4 million tokens and we're looking at burn mechanisms, what options are we looking into to remove Polar from the market, for example, lottery, etc.? I know yields were off the table, but since we continue to print Polar, has Enor considered the possibility of yields? We need to aggressively burn Polar through all means possible.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question as well. So let me see here. What else we should remove Polar from the market? So the lottery would be a very great strategy. Honestly, I would love for the lottery to be like a burn lottery. I think that would actually encourage the community to use it even more. Where you say, hey, yeah, you all put in whatever amount of polar into this, and whatever is, or you could even say you put in some amount of like stablecoin of DAI or whatever, and any amount that is, obtained from that is used to immediately buy back or burn. Or if it's polar tokens, and it's just immediately burned. I think that would be the best way to use the lottery system personally, because what do I care if the polar tokens, well, I guess the reason we have it designed that is because the claims, we actually went back to the claims pool now that my brain's working right. So we were trying to supplement some of the claims pool as well. But I think that would be a better use of those tokens, is to just immediately burn them. Because as you saw, we can gather a couple 100,000 polar tokens, I think, relatively quickly just by throwing out a couple Olympus in a lottery. And that would be a cool way to burn. It's not going to solve all the problems overnight, but hey, it's a start. So doing something like that, also having the life potions go directly to the burns, I think it's a good idea. I think even having this isn't anything official, but I think over time, personally, what I would do is invest into something that is a little bit more stable but generates a decent yield, and use any proceeds from that as an immediate burn whenever there's a profit margin paid out from there. So I think there's multiple things that we can do. I do know that the life potion system is the first and most obvious one, but I do also believe that the lottery would be a very logical place to also incorporate the burns.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think this was the last question. I'm not sure though if I forgot something. Feel free to ping me in the chat or something, guys. I think I got everything though. Is there anyone who would like to speak from the community?
Yeah, as always, if anybody would like to jump up here on the Polar AMA here, whether it be in person or via text, feel free to do so. I do see the latest one that came up there. Is there a time frame for version 4.0? I don't want to give a time frame, but I do know that we are working literally as hard as possible. And we ask, Enor all the time. He gives us updates. So we are pretty clear of like how it's trending, but I really cannot just say it'll be so-and-so days or weeks or whatever, because I'm personally not engaged in it. I'm not working on that stuff myself. And if I'm not working on it, I'm not going to give a timeline for something else that's somebody else's work and is being managed by somebody else. But every time I do get any, even more clear information on it as far as timelines are concerned, I'll definitely put them out to you guys if Enor does not directly himself.
Yeah, so I think we actually, I think you actually covered everything. There's Christo still typing in the general chat. I know he's in the AMA, so oh no, okay, actually he finished this question. How are the investments with Polar Ventures working out at this time?
Sorry, was that Polar Ventures?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So some of them are still growing. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult to get into real deep growth through a bear market, and you're also kind of a seed investor, so you're not really investing in them to flip them, I guess, if that makes sense. So really only one. Which one was that? Sorry, let me get some information out there. One of them in here decided they're not going to do the seed sales anymore, and they're just going to Lidex. If you guys remember me talking about Lidex there, so they're no longer going to do the seed sales stuff. So they, as far as what we know, they're going to send everybody back their seed investment, which for us was 25,000. So once that does come back, we will obviously just put it back into the treasury and reconsider that from there. But they're not being shady. They just don't want to be either controlled or manipulated by in one particular thing, because they're a little bit of a kind of a vast organization and how they operate. So pretty cool little system they got over at Lidex, but they've elected to move away from the seed sales. That's the only one that really hasn't, I guess, checked out, but only because they're choosing to no longer do seed sales. So we're not losing anything on that. Every other one is still progressing as expected, and I think will be a decent asset long term. I've seen a little bit of noise from I think horse nodes on Twitter here and there. They were part of the VC side, and so I think everything's going pretty well, and for the most part, could be better, of course. That's how life is, but we just have to keep doing what we can do. And kind of the point of VCs is like, yeah, you might help fund 10, 100 protocols, and maybe one of them really hits it big one day, and your investment in that protocol is ever changing for everything. So that's kind of how it goes. You help them out, you try not to lose anything, and try to just keep growing and developing from there.
Howdy there.
What's going on, Sam? How are you?
Oh, it's good. How are you?
Living the dream. It's like 100 degrees every day here, and I'm dying. But beyond that, we're doing pretty well.
Well, we had that, and then it disappeared, and now we're like 60s and 70s, so can't complain with that either. But wanted to hop in. You had said you had heard some noise from Horse. I actually, for those who don't know, am the moderator over there, and just spoke with the core team today about stuff. So a little update there for those who are interested. Because I know Polar is invested in there and potential Polar Guardian stuff and on as things get released. Sorry, I have a whining dog with me right now. But they have a lot of stuff done. There's a lot. They are waiting on a couple more things, but things are rearing and ready. They're just kind of, it's a timing thing. I think a lot of projects are in that. So just for all projects and all things involved DeFi, people should keep in mind, like, a lot of people are not wanting to really launch anything until we know we're at or very near the bottom. Launching in a time where it's about to plummet is clearly not going to bode well for anybody. So kind of a little inside sneak peek there. I think there are some things coming in the very, very near future over at Horse. So hopefully one of these days, if we have some good stuff coming, I can hop on with you guys and potentially do a little AMA, just to info session to let people know and actually announce something other than just a Discord server.
Yeah, it's great information over there from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Just came up with that on the fly. So
That was a good one.
yeah, here all day.
So I'll hop off and let you guys get back to it, but always a pleasure to come on and speak, and loyal Polar member here, and still doing my thing. So have a good one, guys.
Appreciate you, man, and thank you for coming up here, and hopefully everything's going well, and love you in the advisor role. So appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Cool.
There was actually just a follow-up question on the previous written question from Sindori again. So, what's the plans for short and midterm if Polar Ventures aren't paying out anytime soon?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. So again, we are very, very, I want to even say hyper-focused on that version 4.0. So that is what we really want to get out and get that going. Now, simultaneously, we do have another team still working on Polaris. So there's kind of two teams working together. I think even more than that, to be honest. There's multiple teams within those two teams, but in the sense, we have the version 4.0 and we have the Polaris. Those are our two primary build phases right now. So that is kind of what we are focused on here. And at that point, we can kind of expand and do it a little bit further. I think that the short-term goal is to get us back on track. And I know just through our discussions, through everything that I've had with Enor and everything with the team there, the short-term goal for the token price, we'll even get like pretty micro here, is a 0.25 token price, token, right? So right now we're 0.03. That is a freaking long way. So that takes a lot of work, right? So that is going to be involving burns, the life system, increased demand, probably multiple other things, but that's kind of the short-term goal for the token. Now, the short-term goal for the protocol, Polar VCs is doing what it needs to do just as designed. Version 4.0 will be out sooner rather than later. And then ultimately Polaris is kind of the longer-term goal that we'd like to get implemented.
Yes, I think that answered the question pretty much. Another follow-up question from him is: are there any ETA in those?
Give me 1 second here. It's sorry, I just kind of cut out, so I'm just trying to read a little bit to make sure that I heard everything. We have a lot of channels. Phew. I'm stalling. Okay, there we go. What is the goal for the token? Wait. Oh, goal for the token. Wait, what? An ETA on those?
It's a question
Zendori.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I just talked about it just before, man. Unless I'm directly on it, or if I've been given direct information, I cannot give a real ETA for any of them. But I do know that the multiple teams are working, and Enor does give us updates very often. So there is progress. We've talked to him even today about just getting some teasers out when possible so that the community can see the progress, because you guys need to see what we are actively working on. That's kind of the key there. One, it keeps you guys engaged, right? You know what we're doing. You hear me say it, but then you get to see what we're doing. So no ETA at all then. I mean, man, I'm not going to give you a day, or I'm not going to give you, I'll say it's sooner rather than later. I mean, like I said, let's say in a theoretical world, I say in 3 weeks, then on 22 days, I answer, well, why is this delayed? Why is this delayed? Maybe it was never delayed. Maybe it just takes them longer than 3 weeks. I don't really know, because I don't work in that industry. That's not really my forte. I wouldn't expect it to be months plural. I would much prefer it to be out, obviously this month if possible, but we haven't had any inclinations that it's going to take like another quarter or anything like that. The work is progressing. The version 4.0 is, from what I understand, relatively close. So that'll be a good step. Polaris is probably months out. That's a real thing. Maybe even more than a couple months, possibly, because that's an actual game. So that's a little bit more difficult to obtain. But I think the 4.0, we are much closer than not, if that makes sense.
Would you mind repeating the kind of the goal for the token price and in whatever frame, kind of short term or long term or mid term? Some people seem to have missed it.
Yeah, so the initial goal is a 0.25 token price, and that's nowhere near the 3 that we were at for quite a while, or the 2.5, or the 2, or the 1, right? So we're clear on all that, but I actually believe that a 0.25 is obtainable for token price in the relatively near realistic term. And again, that would be involving multiple things, including a burn strategy, including some implements to increase demand or to decrease emissions, whatever to do to reduce the cell pressure aspect of it. I've kind of talked a little bit earlier about maybe a method of staking in which, I don't want to say like a cake fork, but even like a farm, which you say, hey, some aspect of you reduce emissions, but if you engage with this, whether it's single side staking, whether it's a farm token, and again, I'm just completely spitballing right here, so don't take anything what I'm saying as what we're building. These are just theoretical ideas. But if you can supplement that APY and another aspect to have people engage in the protocol and not sell the tokens, that's going to reduce cell pressure over time, if not immediately. So I think in a combination of different strategies to reduce cell pressure, increase demand, and reduce circulating supply, I think that is a very key aspect to it. And it all starts with the community and the sentiment in there. And just as I opened up with, I am never going to ask, beg, or request that you guys put $1 or 1 penny into anything. That's not what I'm here to do. But I will say it is better for other people who are just trying to get involved. One, if token price is positive, that's a good thing. And two, if the community sentiment is appropriate for whatever situation is occurring. And being a little concerned, asking questions is not an issue. Trust me, none of us have any problems with that. But more so, I'm just saying, it's so quiet in our Discord. It's kind of sad sometimes. Like, I miss the days when I couldn't even keep up. I was on night shift and I was in there for hours, 24 hours at a time, like literally staying up a full day to keep you guys going, keep you guys engaged. So that's what I miss, and I would love for us to get back to there. And once that sentiment, or even half of that sentiment, is back, that's when the community aspect of the drivers really start to take over, and it allows us to facilitate even more of our own strategies to facilitate that growth.
Another question that just came up in the AMA Questions Weekly channel is from Elfie. Can we get a blog like a weekly, in a Scrum in Scrum? What has been done in the week? What has worked? What didn't, etc. Kind of. I think this person means kind of a weekly update from the developer side.
Yeah, that would be honestly, that'd be a fantastic thing. I'm going to ask you more about that as well. Even if they just want to give me a couple updates, then I can write up something just to put out to you guys once a week. I think it's good for everybody. Then we're kind of all on the same page. And maybe it was a week where everybody's on vacation. Hey, it's good for you guys to know, right? The whole team's on vacation, just so you know. That didn't just happen, so don't get mad at me. I'm just saying, in general, then we say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the progress that we've made. Version 4.0 is X% complete. We're at this phase of it. Polaris is at this phase. I think all of those things are fantastic. Even if we were to, I would just love even to get a transcript of this kind of AMA at some point. It's a little bit harder than I expected. I think there might be something on Microsoft Word. I've tried things and it didn't work out super well, but I'll try to get a little bit better at that to see if I can transcribe some of these things in here to at least give a little bit in there. But I think just a clean, quick, down and dirty update once a week would be very encouraging just for the community to see that, hey, okay, yep, this is progress. This is what they're doing. This is what's happening. And, that's honestly, I've had people always say, these weekly AMAs are a waste of time because you're not giving us any info. Well, what I'm telling you right now is that we are still here and that I'm still engaging with you. Because if you go completely silent in a project, that's not good, or in a business, it's not good. So my job is to keep us engaged. I think that would be a great addition to that, to allow you guys to see what's all going on at any given time.
So there was just another question coming up. I think we kind of covered it last week. It's again from Madeira Alex75. Has there been any discussion or thoughts on an NFT art related to Polar? Could be another burn mechanism. I actually read a lot of proposals like this, since we have obviously we have pretty good looking NFTs already. Maybe people would be down to pay for the art itself, which is this is something that could be very well implemented, and also in combination with a burn mechanism.
Yeah, I think there's definitely different ways to, obtain a very similar result over time. So I think there will be some aspect of an NFT for this life potion system, but not quite. I don't think in what you're getting at there. I think kind of what you're suggesting is that what if we just minted NFTs, even if they didn't have any real utility? If people wanted them, then they can be burned with a polar use to obtain them, if I'm not mistaken in what you're getting at there. So Enor and I have talked about that earlier on. He's not super interested in getting NFTs that don't have utility out. At least he wasn't then. I think it'd still be cool, and we would, if we did it and put just a couple artists on them, maybe even nothing crazy, just looks good and polar themed. A lot of people would buy them. Maybe only 100 people would buy them, but still, whatever amount. Let's just say you made them $100, right? So that would be 3,000 polar. So you do that 100 times. That's 303,000 polar that could be burned in that aspect. You got to take into account the cost of building those NFTs and creating those NFTs, of course, but something like that I think could be an interesting idea to look into. I personally like it because I think the NFTs are just nice to have as PFPs and to show a little bit of loyalty into the protocol. So it has been discussed, but it's not currently in progress or anything like that.
I just got a DM from another person with a question. I don't know if if you'd be comfortable with me saying your name, so I'll just read the question. Considering the issues that Thor currently has with their PTE, do you know how Polaris will be different or better? Is there kind of some content that already is public, then that can be given out to the community?
Yeah, so that's here. Let me again. I kind of like to read it as well, so I don't miss anything. Where was that question at? I'm
I'll
sorry.
just DM it to you.
Oh, in a DM.
It was from the DM. Exactly.
Yeah. So basically, okay, cool. All right, sweet. So that is a very interesting question. And now I did mention that I'm a personal investor in Thor, but obviously I've been pretty busy in a lot of these aspects. So quite frankly, I'm not a very active investor in it. Actually, it's the 6th, and I think I missed my claims today, so all my tokens are probably gone. But that being said, I think Polaris was in theory going to be a little bit similar to what the Thor's game was going to be. I'm not sure what happened with them yet. I didn't really look into it. I thought their AMA was in like 30 minutes, so I was trying to get this out before to let people listen into that to see what happened. But I think ours was going to be Enor has brought it up as like a fight to earn system, and it's just going to be a little bit different, at least at the beginning. We've had a lot of really good talks about like larger visions of games, like legitimate games, like actual PC games or console games and all that. Those take, if not years to make. So that's not really practical as far as what we're concerned as a protocol here today. But we can make a relatively decent game, which incorporates different aspects of like a fight to earn system. It's kind of like a play to earn, but it's more of like a P2P sort of thing, which I think is pretty cool. I'm relatively interested in the gaming side of crypto, more so because I understand that it's going to be the future of NFTs, less because like I'm not a huge gamer. I'll play Warzone with my homies every once in a while and drink some moonshine, but that's about it. So this aspect is interesting because it is the future of what NFTs are going to be at some point. So I think that'll be a great thing to have some adaptation into now. So once Polaris is live, then we can then build it up even further to ultimately become something more relevant. But I think it's going to be different than the Thor one, but I'm not overly aware of exactly what they were working on. So I do apologize for that.
Okay. I think if I didn't miss anything, the last question is from Alfie again. I think there has to be some kind of intern reorganization meeting wise. What we do at my firm is once in a week we sit together from every team and one person says what has been going on, etc. I think you've been a bit distant from the dev team. This is not your fault, really. The devs are freelancers and it's hard to manage them, but it has to be made possible since you are the gateway to the public.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate that there, and there is even when I was brought on the team, Enor talked to me, and quite frankly, most of, if not all of the other people on the Polar team don't speak English super well. So even Enor, his English is okay, like he can type and he can get through voice calls and stuff like that, but not super fluently. So for me to be included in everything in their native language as far as a full-blown discussion is hard, but I do think getting some more updates that I can give to you guys is it's more or less a requirement to succeed in my aspect there. So I'm not super concerned about all that, but I would like more information to give you just because I feel like you guys deserve it. So I'll kind of talk to him about that and say, hey, can I get some updates? Maybe a little bit more detailed, just things that we're okay to get out to the community once a week so that we can have a little bit more valid and substantial conversations here. I think it's very valid.
So I think that actually was the last question for today. Are there any other questions from the community or people who would like to come up and speak?
As always, guys, we've been here now for an hour. Good timing. I do apologize that I jumped this Polar AMA up by 30 minutes because I was mistaken, I believe, in when the other AMA was rolling for Thor. But shout out to them. Hopefully they resolve what they're doing there. I'm not super cognizant of it, so it is what it is. Shout out to. Can I just call you Julian? Julian? Julian?
Yes, of course. Oh, of course, go for it.
I feel so bad mispronouncing your name, man. I'm sorry. Us damn
Absolutely
Americans
no
can't
problem.
get these accents right, so. But shout out to you, man. Definitely appreciate you jumping up here with me and helping me navigate through some of the comments. It's great now, and ideally, once we start really kicking, burning with gas again in the community, and we have 250 people in here, and it's just popping and bouncing, that we can really, get these engaged and get control of it a little bit more. So definitely appreciate you up here. Shout out to the community as always. Without you guys, Polar is literally nothing. I've told you guys that probably every week since January. You guys are truly why we are here today, because your investments and our investments into you guys are what got us to this point in our life where we can now build these other aspects. So shout out to you guys, shout out to the team, shout out to all the mods, all the community. Appreciate you guys chiming in here, talking with us on the AMA, asking questions. And as always, next week I'll keep it at that 8 p.m. UTC unless any unforeseen circumstances come into play. But Wednesday, 8 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Eastern, or 1 p.m. Pacific, and whatever time it might be in your zone will be next week. Same time, same place. Shout out to you guys. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the chats.